Australian poet once said, "I love a sunburned country, a land of sweeping plains, of ranged mountain ranges, of droughts and flooded rains. I love her horizons, I love her jewel sea, her beauty and her terror, the wide brown land for me." Now, the reason I can talk about Australia is because I have spent several hours looking through different sites trying to find good sources to grab from. So Australia is an incredible place with its wildlife, culture, and its scenery. So to start with the wildlife, according to BBC, there are over 1,000 different species in Australia. Now 30% of these species are actually deadly to humans. That's not very good statistics if you ask me, it's kind of scary. But 80% of the animals in Australia are actually considered unique to the land. Did you know that some of the most dangerous animals live in Australia? One, for example, would be the Sydney funnel web spider. Right here. This is no ordinary spider. It ranges from 6 centimeters to 7 centimeters long. And both sexes of the spider are black, brown, and blue in color. Now, what's so deadly about this spider, you might ask, is obviously its venom. The venom, there was a case in Australia where a 28-year-old man died within 28 minutes of being bitten by this spider. Now, you know the expression that it's more afraid of you than you are of it? That's actually not true according to the spider. This spider actually is more prone to attack you than you are of it. So if you want to pull up that video real quick, I'm going to show you. I already checked, there's going to be no ads. Okay, now he's gonna slow it down real quick. And as you can see, he wasn't doing anything to bother that spider. It just didn't like that thing was too close to it. But anyway, so now onto something more happy than this spider would be the kangaroos. Now, kangaroos are considered the most popular animal in Australia, and we obviously agree with that. Did you know they're actually the only mammal that uses the jumping ability as its main source of navigation? They're actually highly vegetative animals, and they actually use boxing techniques like kickboxers to defend off prey like lions, and they also use it to play with each other and, of course, show who's more dominant than the other. And Kane, who's not here, he asked me if you could legally own a kangaroo. That's not true unless you're a doctor. So next would be Australia's culture and lifestyles. Now, Australians are mostly like us here in America, but there's some slight differences. So say I'm good friends with an Australian, they're more likely to give me a nickname than I am to them. They love giving each other nicknames. It's like it's a cultural thing. And another thing is they are really sarcastic. I personally had an experience with a guy at Hy-Vee who was from Australia, and he would be very, very, very sarcastic about what he wanted to eat or did he want to drink. And it got to the point where it got kind of frustrating because I didn't know actually what he wanted. Now, Australians love their sports, and this is one sport in particular. This is a rugby game versus North and South Australia. They call it the State of Origin. And the State of Origin will be celebrating their 100th game next year in 2017, but so far North Australia holds the record 75-23 against South Australia. So if you're a North Australia fan, you always win normally. So according to the same site, there was actually, according to this slide, there's also horse racing, and horse racing in Australia is actually just as popular as football is here. So that's the Melbourne Cup, and as you can see, it's super celebrated in Australia. So according to the same site, Australians love the outdoors due to their climate. I mean, when's the last time you heard of a hurricane hitting Australia? You don't really hear that. So many of them spend their time at the beaches or playing sports. Most people consider all Australians to live in the outback, but that's actually not true. 75% of Australians live on cities dotted along the coastline of Australia. Now, according to thebesttours.com and australia.com, some of the most iconic places are going to be the Sydney Opera House, Broad Beach, Moreton Island, which is that far one, and then I can never pronounce this, but it's the Uluru Sunset, and then obviously the sunset of the outback. And then there's also somewhere really unique in Australia. It's a golf course that allows live kangaroos to roam while you're playing a game of golf. So it's in Angelessa. It's called the Angelessa Golf Course. It's the only one in the world that has live kangaroos roaming it while you're playing golf. So they recommend there that you don't hit kangaroos, obviously, with the golf balls. They wouldn't like that. Now, on to the next slide. Some of the best tours there, one of them is the Adventure Tour, which takes you along the eastern coast of Australia, which is mostly where the lush forests and greens are. Then you have the cheaper RT tours. They're about $2,000, $3,000, so if you want to just get a quick trip to Australia, I would take an RT tour. And then there's also the Bamaway and Oxyposure. These both go through Queensland, which is supposedly the most iconic place of Australia. It's super beautiful. And then for the next slide, there's actually a tour there that's the top rated of all time. It's above any other tour out there in the world. It's called the Australian and New Zealand Grand Explorer. It's a 27-day tour. It's about $12,000, and it takes you through over 12 different places in Australia and about 14 different places in New Zealand. So as you can see by dotted on the map, that's the exact route that they take. But some of the places are the city of Sydney, the Cairns, Ayers Rock, the Great Barrier Reef, Melbourne, Queenstown, and many more. So I would just like to say, now that you all are going to book your trips, I'm going to conclude this speech. So Australia is full of all kinds of incredible things and has many different types of animals. Would you all visit Australia? Yeah? Sweet. All right, so I personally am going to visit Australia, and I really enjoyed researching this topic.